Nice to have everybody here. We're going to talk about monetization mix, how you pick the right one for your game. I would also like to dive a bit into how 2019 has been, because we've definitely seen some changes. We've seen hyper-casual come suddenly enter the stage and then become difficult. We've seen other places and spaces become difficult. Subscription has suddenly become a thing again, especially in the mobile space. I think there's been a lot of changes in the ad space as well, where we can measure things better. Bidding is becoming a real thing that you can actually use. And we have a really nice high caliber panel sitting here. So we have Wilhelm from GameRefinery. Just maybe everybody says a few words about themselves.
Hello everybody, I'm Wilhelm Voutilainen from GameRefinery, and what I do is basically I'm a senior game analyst and analyze mobile games.
Hey everyone, so I'm Antti Hattara. I'm CEO and founder of Starberry Games. We developed Idle Coffee Corp. We're based in Berlin, a small team making casual games. So I'm kind of speaking from a small indie aspect.
Hi everyone, I'm Romain, working from Ogury. We are specialized in brands in games, driven by user choice. I will tell you more about this.
Hi, my name is Ofer, president of Fyber, originally from Israel, based in San Francisco for the last 9 years. Fyber is a mobile mediation platform, and we do an offer wall, a marketplace, and an LTV management platform.
Hey, Michail, I work at Rovio, head of studio. In our studio, we make mid-core games, but overall, Rovio probably better known as Angry Birds company. Yeah.
And that's not the only thing you do. There's a couple of people that also have done very interesting things in the past, but
yeah.
Oh, is there anything else you know as potentially?
The other thing, the passion, the hobby that I have. Yeah, I also am founder of Deconstructor of Fun. So if you read that blog, often behind it. So, yeah.
Very cool. And what I did want to mention as well, Antti may be in India now, but you've run a studio for Wooga, I think, right? You were head of studio at Wooga.
Yeah, I was running studio for Wooga, making puzzle games, Jelly Splash.
Fun fact about Antti, he's the one who hired me to games.
Yes!
Also, I'm old.
You were working together at, I found this actually. What was the company that you were working at together before?
Yeah, it's Digital Chocolate, so that's based in Helsinki. Naturally, I'm also Finnish.
Do you regret it?
We haven't spoken since.
Perfect. So I've sent everybody a couple of corner points of what I wanted to talk about. One of those things was to have a bit of a think about 2019, how you would summarize that briefly. Maybe we start with Michail?
Okay, so it was summarized in 5 words, but I would say 3. So it would be ads and subscriptions.
Okay, so you're counting the end as well?
I think I have to, but I could do a longer one, but let's just count the quotes. Wow.
I had more, but now I have to shrink it. I would say banners. Banners had seen a renaissance in 2019. They came back out of nowhere. I would say privacy between GDPR, CCPA, Google Play, audience policies, and you know, Apple doing Apple stuff, and definitely privacy and policy that were big. And the big platforms betting on games.
I think we're at like 30 words now, but carry on.
All right.
Big platforms betting on games.
Okay, so what can I say to support what you're saying? Even more brands in games.
Yay!
Woo! I did it, guys. Yes.
I agree with Miska. To be more specific, I think subscriptions, Battle Pass. That's I think 2019 the interesting thing. And yeah, ads. I would specifically mention China and the CPMs in China. Yeah. So potential in that market.
And I would have to say, if we keep it really short, well, Battle Pass plans in all genres. And then I would say metagame monetization in casual games now as well. And I have to agree with you on the brands now as well, for sure.
Perfect. How have in-app purchases, ad revenues, whichever you're working with, hopefully both, how have they been developing over the past year? What has changed? What has been remarkable in your opinion? Maybe we start with Roma?
Me, right? Yeah. So basically, we've seen like a lot of changes in the way advertisers were looking at games, and which is very positive for all of you guys here. So I was just like watching the Wangel and also Pub Native like conference just before here, and what we see is that advertisers are trusting more and more the gaming inventory. There are still things that needs to be done in order to reassure them. So we mentioned brand visibility, we mentioned like whitelist. This is something that they go mental with that, you know. Brand safety is one of the key assets. Actually, like 87 of the campaign brief we receive, 87% of the campaign brief we receive at Ogury comes with the whitelist as a requirement. So the advertiser, before running the campaign, so Nike, for example, they want to know where their ads is going to be displayed. And gaming, it's something that they say, gaming, what is that? You know, they like to invest in BBC, New York Times, for example. They have no problem with that. When it comes to games, it becomes more a challenge for them. Mm-hmm. So we found a way, like by unbiased data, I would say, we show that the user that goes to BBC every day is also the same user that uses Rovio game, for example. And we connect the dots, and thanks to that, we are able to bring those brands in games. And I could say much more, but we see more and more confidence in the market, which is great for the gaming industry.
Very cool.
Yep. So from kind of a game dev perspective, I would say 2019 with ads and IP, we started with only monetizing with ads on Idle Coffee Corp, and that I see kind of as a nice model that was enabled. So ad LTVs being such high that you can kind of get kickstarted as with limited resources in a small team, you want to make something fast. You can actually make an LTV with ads that gets you supported. Maybe you can even call global launch, and then we've been pushing towards IAP. We even implemented subscriptions, so kind of wanting to make it during the life phase of the game, shifting from ads and getting more monetization on IAPs.
Yeah, from a game feature analyst perspective, I don't really have info on the sort of how the numbers have been developed, but actually what we have noticed at GameRefinery during the past year, especially in top crossing games, the usage of incentivized ads have been heavily going up. So, for example, you're incentivized, for example, to watch an ad, and then you get a reward for that. And players really seem to like that.
All right. So a lot of things said. So, personally, the way that I'm looking at things is naturally naturally in our studio side, it's on the in-app purchase side. And what you're really seeing is some of the games that have been for a long time in the market, the revenue per install is just increasing constantly. It's really hard to get a new game into the market, and if you look at the numbers of games entering the market, it has really dramatically decreased since 2016, 2017. And that's partly because the existing games are retaining so well, and they're monetizing better and better, and the payback times are increasing because they're able to predict their LTVs much better. So I would say, yeah, just increase of return per revenue per download.
Alpha?
Very, very little to add. You asked about in-app purchase and advertising. I would say that if in the past in-app purchase accounted for, 70, sometimes 80% of revenue, we've seen it starting to balance with in-app ads. Sometimes 60-40, even 50-50 in-app purchase and in-app ads, and that's an interesting trend.
What would you attribute that to?
I guess coming back to all the points that the people here said before, I mean, there is so much you can do within a purchase, and there's bigger audience for casual and hyper casual, where in a purchase behaves differently, then ads takes a bigger place, and then you see it going up. I mean, you mentioned hyper casual before, it's going like crazy.
So the ratio you were mentioning, that's across the board and not within individual products, because that makes a lot more sense.
It's quite heavily reliant on different genres. So as the ad revenue is increasing, you see different sub-genres creating more games like Starberry, like Antti's company. I mean, they're creating more and more games that are catered to both take advantage of ads and in-app purchases. It's not across all the categories, but if we're talking 50-50, that's about like idle games, and 90 or 95.5 would be hyper casuals. And then with the casuals, it's a little bit more, but then when you go to fully core games like Call of Duties and whatnot, the percentage is naturally smaller.
I agree with you. If I may,
Go ahead.
well, I completely agree. We do see slowly a lot of A/B testing around exposing also in-app advertising into the mid-core and on the core side, and trying to segment some of the paying users, maybe carve them out. But we can take it off.
There's something I wanted to jump into, two things actually. So you mentioned, Antti, you mentioned that you started out doing purely advertising, and then switched, well, not switched, but integrated in-app as well and subscription. Was that out of necessity? Have you seen anything change to the degree where you had to do this?
No, we wanted to be fast. So it was more like we've got very limited resources, and the first thing we put in to monetize with was ads, like right from the get-go in pre-soft launch type of stuff. So IAP was just, we need to get them towards the global launch and right after it in. Subscriptions took a bit longer for us, but we can talk about that maybe. Other question.
Okay. And I was wondering, you mentioned that you've seen less games come on the market, you've seen revenue for existing games just increase. At the same time, we have an insane squeeze in terms of UA costs that I think a lot of people are feeling. What would you recommend to anybody who's not a Rovio launching a mobile game that is not purely advertising driven?
Okay, so what would be the approach for a company with no significant marketing resources?
Yeah.
I think the approach would be to enter the market as fast as possible, because you're probably assuming that you don't have that much resources for development, so you need to see the early traction for your game. I think the monetization models that Antti was talking about were very hybrid in terms of using both ads and in-app purchases. Ads specifically because you can, the return on investment could be even faster. So you're not competing against games that have been on the market with high in-app purchases. So. I would just summarize, just go to the market as fast as possible. Don't look at one monetization model, try to use both, and you have to go basically for the stickiness, because that high initial engagement will contribute to the ad revenues pretty quickly, and then you're able to scale up.
Yeah, and to support this idea, if I may, there is something really, really important, especially for the new player. When your name is Rovio, you have a huge attraction from the market, because your name is Rovio. So people knows your name, and people tend to play more your games rather than an independent studio like launching their new game tomorrow. So there is one thing that I will say here is that gaming industry is one of the only industry actually in the market that accept to display ads for their competitors. It's really important what I'm saying here. I was saying that yesterday as well. I'm going to push this message again, but do you see BBC displaying ads for New York Times? Do you see Lovu displaying ads for Tinder? Not happening. Gaming is where we accept this, because this is the gaming industry, this is how it works. So pay attention, know your metrics. Pay attention a lot on how user churn. Actually, you can refer to some company in the market like Sumla, for example. They have done an analysis of how user churn, and they analyzed when users were exposed only to gaming ads, and they done the comparison also by adding brands into the mix. Results is that the churn of the user can be decreased by up to 8 when you start displaying branding ads within your game. So it's really, really important. It's great to make money, and especially in a hyper-casual game, that you need to act fast and make the most of it quickly, because they are very instant games, one-tap button, stuff like that. So the user needs to stay as long as possible while making the most of it. Brand doesn't mean that you will sacrifice the CPM or the money you will make it. Sometimes they are asked as much space as other gaming company. Just think it. There is more and more company pushing that direction, including Fyber, Ogury is positioned on that. You have Pub Native. Brand is really important into your mix. It's not going to stand for 100% of the ad revenue, but still the 30% you will get with brand will increase a lot the user LTV.
I have a question for Wilhelm. And I forgot it. Perfect. There we see. What would you say are the best practices to make sure that all the monetization modes you're using do not cannibalize each other, at least not massively? I'm sure some degree of cannibalization can't be helped, but what would you recommend?
Well, I'd say that you really have to think about sort of, for example, if you're thinking about using a hybrid model between subscriptions and IAPs, for example, when you look at the Battle Pass plan, which is just another way of doing subscription plan, that can work. That can really support I'd say the IAP purchases as well, because for example, if you look at the Clash of Clans recently introduced their Battle Pass, and it was hugely successful. You had really low price point of, I think it was like $5, and you get a huge value from that, and the players really loved that, and that also boosts the retention, which then supports the other IAP revenue as well from the game. So that can, like, you just have to think. And another example, for example, is that if you look at casual games like coloring games, then you have subscription plans where the content is sort of tied behind the subscription. But it seems to work for that kind of audience, because you have to, if you think about coloring books in real life, you have to buy it sort of to get it.
It's more natural for that.
Yes, exactly.
Type of user.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like you might have some thoughts on that as well. Do you? Do you have thoughts sometimes?
No, I mean, are we going to talk about subscriptions or not?
I'm not asking about subscriptions or not, although that's actually an interesting topic, because
I don't have anything to add to that particularly.
Okay.
But yeah. There are other games where those battle pass have been added and it's actually been negative. So
exactly. Has there been cases where you've seen, or you're expecting there to be damage? If we can't say what you should be doing, what should you not be doing? Maybe that's a different way to approach it.
With subscription.
With subscription or any mode of monetization that you're using when it's more than one.
Well, the challenge is, like you mentioned, Clash of Clans as an example, and there are other games that. Everything from Playrix games to Supercell games to other top-grossing games that have added this Battle Pass model. The problem kind of in there is that those games didn't have inherently that model, so it's been put on top of it. And you mentioned that Clash of Clans has had a significant revenue increase, which is true. But then again, Clash Royale hasn't. And it's actually declined. It's not necessarily based on that. I haven't played Clash of Clans that much. I played Clash Royale, and there I was getting too much from the Battle Pass, which decreased my spending in other elements. So I know from personal experience, as well as looking at the data, that it hasn't decreased. And the other part, you mentioned coloring games, and there are some other hyper-casual games that used to be very dishonest with subscription system, just fooling people. And Apple has actually, crank that down, so you see the game's revenues now declining in terms of in-app purchases. So I think the industry is kind of learning how to do subscription, but we really don't have other than the Fortnites and the CODs and other games that launched with Battle Pass that really mastered the Battle Pass, because that was their monetization model from the beginning.
So this is essentially the same thing as.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on the topic. Like preventing cannibalization of because we're going to go with our next title, we're going to go all in subscriptions, IAPs, and ads, of course.
And you're designing the subscriptions from the beginning, not like
so we
can do free to play out of a game that wasn't free to play, which was what we saw. Years ago.
I've had some thoughts on subscription as well. On Idle Coffee we've implemented both on iOS and Android subscriptions, but how kind of I approach it from the game design perspective is, so ads are the ones that are going to give you a sampler of something that's going to be super nice in the game. It's going to be 3 minutes of 2 extra revenue in an idle game and something's flashing and you kind of see the reward there. With IAP, you want to convert that to something that's then permanent potentially. So that's kind of, ads are tied to the IAP in a way that they give you a sample of it. That could be one way to think about it. And then for subscription, I'm pretty sure that's just on kind of just starting, and you can use it for something that's actually increasing retention and engagement. So subscription, you should be thinking, I want to incentivize the player to come every day. If they subscribe for 7 days, I want to make something that if they log in every day, they get kind of the benefits. So that's kind of pushing for, with that kind of a monetized motivation for the user to also like play more and engage more. So then give the benefit that when they purchase, they can make the most out of it by returning to the game more often.
It's okay. We didn't hear that.
And I don't even know, that's just
It
my
was my
music
phone.
blasting.
Time to lunch.
But if I can build on what Antti was saying, is kind of like put more theory around it. So when thinking about subscriptions and kind of like from theoretic perspective instead of what we have right now, I think the main point in subscription service, whether you're thinking about Spotify, whether you're thinking about Spotify came to my mind, or whether you feel Amazon or Salesforce or whatnot, you kind of start with the access. So when you're signing up to subscription, it's giving you access to something unique. So in a case of theoretical, hypothetical, slots games, the subscription would give you an access to totally unique slot machines and totally unique progression, and that gives you some meaning to actually convert. And there are 5 more things that you have to think about that Antti kind of mentioned, but I'll just put theory around it. So this second thing is honesty, and that's what we haven't seen in hyper-casual developers, where they kind of fool you to getting a subscription, and they're not honest in the sense that they don't deliver the value that they're selling. So Netflix is honest with subscription because you subscribe to Netflix, you're not expecting them to not do any more movies or anything. Like, you know that they're going to come in with banging content the next month and the month after that and the next, and this series is going to continue. That's honesty with subscription. That's the same thing with World of Warcraft. Like, you expect new content coming in. And then simplicity comes in at the third part. There are some subscription services which list all kind of crap, and it's really hard to understand what's going on. But if you're really clear, again, World of Warcraft, this is 1 month, this is 3 months, this is 6 months, this is a year. Very simple. What you're going to get. We're honest. You believe in us, and this is what we're going to deliver. That's really important.
Transparency.
Then what Antti was talking about, engagement, is important in the sense that a good subscription service is the one that rewards you for engagement. So again, a battle pass is about not only you're getting the subscription, but the more time you invest, the better reward, the more rewards you're going to get. And also, the kind of like the fifth point there is that the rewards get better all the time. So it's not only rewarding you for engagement, but it rewards you for the more engagement you put in, and that actually leads to microtransactions where you can pay for engagement. And the final part is the VIP. So that's not what a lot of subscription services do, but think about it when in the beginning of the year there's like all these music services and whatnot, they're running these campaigns, first 3 months free, and you're like, well, I'm subscribing to this. Do I get the first 3 months free? Like, this is not fair. So in a good subscription service, the VIPs also are rewarded for staying VIP. Like, it would be nice that Spotify would say, you've been subscribing to our service for 6 years. Here's a free month because we're giving it to others as well. Like, that's an example that they won't do.
An additional currency that way you get loyalty points,
something
essentially.
like that. So those are kind of the 6 points that theorize what Antti was saying.
Can I be honest with you for a second?
Absolutely. Maybe.
I don't know much about subscription, but I'm kind of old. Look at my panelists. I'm probably the oldest one. And the point is about like choosing your right monetization mix. And one thing I want to recommend all of you here, developing, publishing, is make sure you have a solid way to test all the assumptions, all the theories, all the thoughts, all the recommendations, all the recipes that we are getting out there, because whatever works for me will not necessarily work for you, and vice versa. And it's very hard to test. Sometimes you implement something for a few months and then you change, but there is seasonality in your game. The DAO goes up or down, and a new competitor showed up. So having a solid A/B testing that can really tell you what's happening, so you can test, game elements, metadata that you've mentioned, a different monetization style, ad units, whatever you can, and really compare everything to each other is crucial. Otherwise, we're just making assumptions, and maybe it works, maybe it didn't. And we need numbers. In this, every app is a business, and you need numbers to support any assumption that you take.
And I will add something which is the most sexiest, I would say, topic of the year, especially in 2020. And you know this word, it's called GDPR. There is something here, guys. We've been, as an entire industry, everybody has been lying to the user on the way the data, their personal data, has been used. So for a long time, we make user believe that actually accessing a game, accessing like a website, was just for free. But actually, we are using their data, personal data, in order for different purposes. Advertising is one of them, but analytics is the others. So I like the way you describe something about transparency. It's really important to explain to the end user how their data is going to be used at the end of the day, which makes me think about this thing. Have a consent manager, be GDPR compliant, explain to the user what you're going to give them in terms of choices. Because at the end, you develop amazing games to let the user play the way they want, how many times they want during the day, and you have different game genres that answer that. And basically, think about the user choice. They need to have the ability to accept to share data with you. They have the ability to refuse sharing data with you, and then you can decide to spam them until the moment they say yes. Or you can make, if you have IAP for ad-free experience, you can liaise this thing, IAP, within the consent manager. Like this, you make two rocks, one. I don't know if this is a valid expression in English, but you will
Two birds with one stone.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. But actually, we just like your average opt-in rate of a consent manager is 50 to 60% on the market. If you include IAP within this consent manager, you can bring it to 70 to 80%. 70 to 80% of users saying yes to share data, it's huge. If you got 99 today, it's probably because you're forcing the user to say yes, which is, by the way, no valid by the legal. Okay? Sorry, it was a bit long, but I insist on that point that nobody wants to talk about because it's not sexy at all, but it's really important, guys.
It's just this thing has been flashing at me angrily for some time.
Okay,
which is really sad, actually. There's a lot more questions I would be asking, but I feel like maybe we should invite people to ask questions, and if they don't have any, then it'll just be me. Perfect. Sorry.
Thank you very much. First of all, congratulations and thank you for being here. I just want to ask you if you have seen or experienced in-game ads that haven't been too intrusive or annoying, which is kind of what usually happens. And then on the second part of the question, how do you see the future of ads integrated, like tailor-made for games, for a better experience for users, and still be able to make money for companies?
Can I take the second one? Before you guys, because we have ad guys that will talk a lot about just integrate ads, just add some little testing, and you'll figure it out. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so I'd say the positive impact of ads and how it can be tied to game development. I'll do an example of Call of Duty. So they ran a campaign of playable video ads for kind of choosing what game mode to invest to next. And they had different stuff, but one of them was zombies, and basically what the player did in the playable ad, they just chose what to do next. And in that, I think like 80% or even more of the players chose the zombies mode. So it was a clear signal to the game team that they should probably invest into the zombies since it was the most engaged one. And in that case, it wasn't, well, probably the developers that showed the ad made the money, but it was good also for the development team in the sense that they got the whiff of what to do next and re-engage the players.
Right.
So your first question was about are there are there examples of the implementation of ads that not being intrusive, or the ad content?
Well, the ad content can really change, but the implementation is always like the same.
Yeah. So yeah, because I'm looking at it from a point of paying my employees, and so we started fairly like gently with rewarded video ads when we first integrated them, and over the last 8 months we've gone from I don't know 3 to 5 ads per DAU to somewhere beyond 6 and 7 ads per DAU. That's quite a lot of ads. The engaged users are watching a lot of them, and what we've noticed, of course, is like so we only have rewarded video ads. That's of course semi-non-intrusive when you're not when you actually want to watch it. But of course, what we've learned is that the more you kind of offer the chance to watch an ad, it actually is quite effective as well. So I would say, would be still seeing 2020 quite a lot of pushing ads in front of you just to make sure that you have a chance to actually then convert people to watching ads. So I'm not sure if it's going to work if we hide them somewhere and expect people to go and kind of get that logic. So actually more intrusion unfortunately works. It probably is to some extent, but
If I can add, just because Antti makes idle games and modification with idle games, and they do good integration with ads because you watch the ad to speed up something, and then you come back to that. So you kind of watch the ad at the end of your session. So not only is the ad beneficial and you want to watch the ad, but also ad is more efficient because you're already exiting that session. And if you show another ad for another company, then you're likely download another game and play that on the side with your coffee corp.
You made a good point about, look, you may be surprised, but for the vast audience out there, ads are part of your game economy. I mean, it's part of the experience. I watch an ad to shorten the time I can unlock a new feature in the game. I like it. I'm going to engage with it. There are several numbers showing that rewarded video specifically actually increases retention in the game. Yeah. Of course, you don't abuse it. So as long as you plan it accordingly, it works.
I think a lot of people really like rewarded ads. I personally like ads that are well targeted. Sometimes I'm like, hey, I'm glad I know this thing now. Do we have additional questions? Really? Nobody? Wasn't there one?
No, I can add something regarding.
Okay.
I get a feeling of where you want to go with your question, like maybe having amazing integrated ads within your game. The whole problem with that is that, on the paper it's amazing because indeed we like to have like an integrated, like Nike, for example, on your player, or Nike shoes on a character, for example, which is great. It's just going to take like a huge amount of energy and time. And you need to you have the same problem when your name is Rovio. You can do that and go to talk to Nike, despite the fact that you will get maybe 2 months to get a meeting with them. And then you need to build a partnership, implement that. And today we haven't seen yet like a scalable way to do that. Because that in place, like there is no standard in that kind of stuff, every bespoke solution become like a very tough job for you, but also for the brand, because this is something new. So you can build something there, but it will take time. So maybe if your choice is to say, I need to make a choice between like energy and what is going to bring me in terms of money, display may be an answer. And then you can play with the different ads, like interstitial, intrusive, rewarded video, banner, less intrusive but less paid. Or you have like some proprietary formats, which call like floating ads or thumbnail. You can see that a lot on mobile web. It's like Facebook, you know? Sorry. You see, like when you start watching a video, it goes down on the little screen and you have a little square. You still access your content by still seeing the video. Yeah. You can think about something like that as an alternative as well. New format, but this is not a standard again.
Kirstin, gentlemen,
yes,
thank you so much for coming up and sharing your ideas and thoughts with us. That's great. I want to make sure that we give an extra thanks to GameRefinery, which sponsored today's track. I'm not sure which part this is for, but guys, thank you.